Welcome to The Third Chair, a show about real people, real stories, real life. And here are your hosts for The Third Chair, Peter Grigg and Doug Bazeski.
Good evening, or good day, and welcome to The Third Chair. So, Doug, why is it that all of our female guests are like martial art experts?
I thought about that, but when our daughter was younger, we worried about men attacking her, and we had a friend who was a black belt in one of the martial arts, and he agreed to teach our daughter self-protection and things like that. And I was worried about the college years because I don't know if they have a handle on college. I think she survived those okay.
Yeah.
But, I still worry about her. I mean,
Yeah.
a female on her own, and
Sure.
sometimes at night. She used to call me, like in college when she had a night class, and talk to me all the way to her dorm room, So, scary situations are out there.
That's for sure. I mean, the more I think about it, not only have I done my black belt, but also my wife and two of my three daughters also got their black belt.
Yes.
Yeah, it was their big chance to kick dead. And then one of my daughters, I also
gave them applause for that.
Yeah, and social acceptance. You can be at the doctor and they say, is anyone hitting you? And it's like, no, my daughter's like, kick me. My one daughter also likes to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with me because, quote, I like to choke out dad. So, yeah, I guess it's
I have more admiration for your daughters now.
Yeah, she sure enjoys those martial arts. Well, I'm really excited about our guest tonight. She's real intense, but also has a great deal of energy and passion and humor. And so as we bring her on, it's time to get some deeper insights from our next guest. She's educated with a BS and is currently an entrepreneur and runs the front office of a Colorado medical practice. Tonight, she will share her life-shaping, difficult, and transformative journey. I couldn't help but use that word, transformative. We would like to offer this disclaimer. Our guest's journey deals with some dark areas of her life. If children are watching with you, we suggest that you watch at another time. There's some very adult issues that our guest experienced, but we believe that people need to hear and learn from our guest and from her experiences. Please welcome Monique Foster. Well, Monique, thanks for joining us again. So, tell us a little bit about your family. Anything you'd care to share?
Oh, goodness. I am the youngest of 5 girls. My poor father had to, put up with 5 girls. I have 3 children of my own. I've been married for 25 years.
Wow.
And we're pretty good. We're pretty well together.
Now, I know we talked about this beforehand. You've had 3 children of your own, but you have had more children than that.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that and with whatever you're comfortable talking about.
So when my youngest child, a boy, I have a son, was about 3.5, 4 years old, I ventured into the world of surrogacy, and I was
surrogacy.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's actually a difference between surrogacy and what I did. I was a gestational carrier.
Could you explain that? Because I've heard those terms and I find them a little bit confusing.
So surrogacy is when a female, such as myself, donates not only her own eggs, but also carries the baby and full term and delivers. A gestational carrier is artificial insemination, so somebody else's eggs and sperm, and then I carried babies. So they're not genetically linked to me at all. Gotcha.
And, I can't even imagine what it would be like to go through a process like that. Is it emotional in different ways?
It's definitely emotional, but it's also very different. So when families or a couple decides to become a family, there's a lot of intimacy that goes into making that baby, even if you have to go through fertility treatment. You're creating life with somebody that you love, so that's an intimate bond. But when you are a gestational carrier or a surrogate, that intimacy is definitely different. It's changed. So for me, it was very scientific, and I learned a whole heck of a lot about the female body that I didn't otherwise know beforehand. So it takes that component out, so you're not emotionally connected to the fetuses as they grow, but you are connected to the parents. The parents are called intended parents because that's who you're caring for. So you end up with a connection with them, but not so much the baby you're growing, or babies in my case.
Oh, wow. And was there a driving factor or force that led to this decision after you had 3 of your own? Was there something that I'm just kind of curious, sort of what was the mental process for coming to this?
I think that people who venture into the world of surrogacy and gestational carrying have a desire to be part of something that's bigger than themselves, and that was definitely mine. I had fairly uncomplicated pregnancies, and I truly love being pregnant, and I just wanted to be a part of something that was bigger than me. And that could help another have what I was already blessed to have.
Sure. And I assume that, I mean, I don't know how the rules of this work. Are you limited to when you're allowed to even consider doing this? Is there a limit to the number of times? How does that, what's sort of the rules, if there are rules?
I think that they're different from state to state. Most commonly across the board, before you venture into a contract like this, the intended parents want to make sure that you've had your own family. So for the most part, most surrogates or gestational carriers have to have a family of their own. That helps with the desire to want to keep the baby, which is kind of what you see on, like, you always hear the worst case scenarios, or they do like there's movies out there that depict it as they want to keep the baby, and that simply isn't the case. That's the dramatization of, Hollywood and producers trying to make a good film. But the reality is...
Gasp, Hollywood
right?
doing that.
The reality is you have to go through a very in-depth exam, not only for your physical health, but especially your mental health. And then your spouse or your boyfriend or whoever is with you also has to partake in that mental health component to make sure that the risk of you wanting to keep the baby that you have, or babies in my case, is as minimal as humanly possible.
So you did this twice.
I did. The first time I carried a singleton, so one fetus, and the second time was twins. So I had delivered a girl and a boy.
Wow, that is amazing. And you'd mentioned Hollywood, creating drama around this issue. I'm just curious, have you seen any sort of show or movie or podcast or anything that kind of gets it right? Even a documentary on Netflix?
I really haven't. I used to watch... What was that show about delivering babies? I don't remember what it was called. And once in a while they had a surrogate on there, and it was okay, but there was always some kind of drama in the background.
The midwife show?
It might have. No, this was like a docuseries. And I don't remember what it was called, but it was on like TLC or something like that. And I never really saw it depict what I experienced. And what I continue to experience, because the last pregnancy, I still have contact with the babies that I delivered, and they call me their best friend. And one day when they're old enough, the mom will explain to them why, because they don't really understand why, but they're connected to me in a weird way. They love to, send me videos, and they'll text. They're 9 now. They'll text message me, and
oh, wow.
They send me Christmas cards and birthday cards, and they're pretty cute kids.
Nice. Well, that is really fantastic. Yeah, so go ahead, Doug.
Tell us about your childhood. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in, well, that's a tough one. So I was born in Bellflower, California, and I primarily grew up in Whittier, California, which is the Los Angeles County area right on the cusp of Orange County.
Mhm.
But we moved like every 2 years, not because we were military, just because my mom or my dad or stepdad would decide that we needed to go to a different city. So I grew up all
Time to
over
move,
Southern.
kids, huh?
I went all over Southern California.
Mhm.
I went to about 14 different schools from third grade all the way through high school.
See, I was a wimp. I only went to 10.
Only 10? Man.
Military brat.
Yeah, we were forced to move.
You were forced to move. I was forced to move too, just not by soldiers.
That's right. It's like, it's time for you to move. So, you went to all these different schools. Which was your favorite school after all that?
I don't totally remember. I would say if I really had to think about it, like I remember all the schools, but because I was always a new kid, there was always a certain amount of bullying or picking on me, or there was always something that went with being in a new school. I'd say big picture, the one where I had the best experiences was my high school that I graduated from, which was Sonora High. And Sonora was on the borderline of Fullerton, Brea, La Habra, that area, which is Orange County-ish.
Yeah. Do you go to any reunions?
No.
No.
No. But not because I don't want to. We're so far away that it's hard to get there to do it.
Did your parents, how did they make a living so they could afford to move every
My
other
mom
year?
kind of had her own business. They started a electrical company. So my stepfather was in telecommunications, and he started when fiber first came out. So he was a fiber optic technician, and he used to lay fiber when fiber first was like the big thing.
Okay.
And my mom kind of tagged along everywhere he worked. Somehow she ended up working there. I don't quite know how that worked out. But they also had a side business, and it was also telecommunications.
So,
And it was named after my biological dad.
that was interesting. Did they have a reason for doing that?
I'm not sure. I really could not tell you. It's all very confusing.
Maybe there was a legal reason.
Could be. I don't know.
So were they, with all these businesses, were they at home a lot?
No, my parents were rarely home. I would say that I have been raising myself pretty much since I was about 8.
No. Did that cause you to act out?
No, because I have this interesting personality. I had all this freedom. I had no concept of curfews or having to be home when the lights went off. The street lights. That was the time all the kids had to be home, was when the street lights went off, and that just wasn't my story. I could do what I want basically when I wanted, but I really was starved for that family connection, and I just was a good kid. And anytime, even now, when I take a personality test or try to figure things out, I was a guardian. I'm a rule follower. That's just, it's like stuck in my head. It's just is.
Did you say a rule follower?
I'm a rule follower.
Sort of a rebellious rule follower, perhaps.
Who, me?
Well, there's a rule follower and there's a rule analyzer too.
I know.
Yes. So, did you have any hobbies? I mean,
I have been a writer. When I found the gift for wordplay when I was about, 10 or 11, and I love to write. So poetry, short stories, anything with imagery. That was my escape, I suppose.
Did you have any of this published or?
Well, in like school papers or books, and I have a short story that was published in my high school year, a children's book called Spunk the Skunk.
Spunk the
was
the story's name?
It is the story. It was what I titled it.
So were you into skunks or?
No, but I loved Flower from Bambi.
Oh, okay.
And Spunk the skunk just came to me in a dream, and it was about teaching kids to be resilient and teaching when bad things happen, there are places you can go where you can talk about them and tell that would be safe. So I really wanted to take things that had happened to me at a very young age and turn it into a story to encourage people, which I wish I knew where that book was now. I have no idea.
Yeah, it would be neat to see.
It's probably in a box in my basement somewhere.
Well, maybe you should create another one.
When we get back, we'll talk to you about why you had to be so resilient from your teen years.
All right.
I guess.
We'll get back to our guest in just a moment. But
Do you have a story to tell?
would you, yes you, like to be a guest on the third chair?
Send us an email and tell us about yourself and your story.
And please follow us on social media.
Now back to the episode. Welcome back. We're talking about Monique's childhood and her parents not being around much. What did you eat when you were by yourself?
Well, I have memories of, and my aunt has confirmed this too, that she would come over every once in a while and I'd be sitting on the floor eating like M&Ms and soda, and that was like my meal. But as I got older, I decided that I wanted to start cooking. So I've been making Thanksgiving dinner.
What do you mean by older? How old
Oh,
were
I
you?
was like 8, 9.
Oh,
I think
wow,
I made
you
my.
were really old, weren't you?
I think I was super old. I think I made my first Thanksgiving dinner when I was 8, almost 9, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. I have this old. Oh man,
Wow.
I have this old cookbook that I still use from that time.
When I was 8, I could barely use my fork and knife to eat Thanksgiving Day. So what was the favorite meal as an 8 and 9-year-old that you would cook for yourself?
Spaghetti.
Oh, I love spaghetti.
I loved spaghetti. Spaghetti was my thing, and there was none of this like Prego ragu stuff. I would make spaghetti sauce from scratch. So.
Oh, wow.
And I still
So you
do.
were a patient 8 and 9-year-old.
I loved food. And I wanted to eat good food, but I didn't really have a concept of what good food was until my teen years. And as I spent more time with my aunt and my uncle, and I learned that cheese didn't come out of cellophane. Like I didn't know what cheddar cheese was, or what even yogurt was, or I don't know, broccoli. What's broccoli? But once I started experiencing those things, I wanted to learn how to do it for myself. So I started cooking, and I started pushing my own little boundaries, Well,
pretty amazing.
So, like, did you ever make? What's the most complex thing you ever made?
To this day?
No, when you were 8.
When I was 8, probably Thanksgiving dinner.
So, did you do it like Charlie Brown's Thanksgiving dinner with popcorn and candy and stuff? No. What did you do?
So my favorite thing even now is green bean casserole, but and stuffing. So I don't make, and even then I didn't make a regular stuffing or a green bean casserole. I had to have like slivered almonds in my green beans, and I'd saute them in the pan with onions. And with my stuffing, I would do cashews. And as I got older, I added things. So when I was younger, I always put some kind of a nut in my stuffing, and cranberries. And
So you're a very creative cook.
it was, yeah.
So you could have been on that show where the kids are competition.
Oh,
for
what is
cooking.
that? Chopped for
Chopped,
kids.
yeah. Iron Chef America.
Iron Chef, that's what it is.
Yes.
One of my favorite things to make was fettuccine Alfredo.
That's like with the white sauce, right?
With the white cheesy sauce.
The white cheesy
Anything
sauce.
cheese.
Did
is
you
all right.
make your homemade sauces then? Did you like
No.
no, that came out of the can.
That came
So,
out of the little
so
quantity of plastic thing.
All right, so no red sauce would come out of the come out of the can, but the white sauce. Okay.
Well, yes, because you have to sit there and stir it forever. And I
Yeah.
had patience, but I didn't have that kind of patience. I was 9.
Yeah, and you have to use. It works best with real cream, and you're putting Parmesan cheese, and
Too many
it's a lot of
risk
work.
factors to ruin it.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that when you make a red sauce, if you burn it,
It's
as long as you
okay.
don't scrape it off the bottom, you can just keep
Well,
going.
and even if you do, you can just say it's fire roasted.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
You know.
Whereas white sauce, if it's burned,
She was
You're
supposed to be
done.
cooking for herself, so she didn't have to make excuses.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love to check the noodles by throwing them at the wall.
Oh wow.
That
I
was
heard
the
you
best.
throw them at the fridge.
No, you throw them at the wall and hope they stick. If they stick, they're done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, I was throwing them at the wrong thing. See, I can't even cook now.
Well, we'll send you for some lessons too. So, along the same lines, you had some tough times in your childhood, and I know we've talked about this, and you've given me permission to ask a couple of these questions. You told me that there was someone in your family who insisted that you take appetite suppressants and diuretics, water pills. Why was that done at that time? And how did that leave you feeling at that time?
Man, I went on my first diet when I was about 10 years old. And at about 10 years old, I had already, it's actually 10, 11, I had started developing breasts. And I would get teased at school. And people would put toilet paper in my desk. And boys would tease me and, go baba as I ran or jogged in PE. And around that time, I was getting rounder, and that was not perceived, or it didn't bode well for me. So I would go to a doctor with this individual, and I would weigh in 3 days a week because I was supposed to be skinny and beautiful. And if I wasn't skinny and beautiful, then I didn't have anything to offer. The goal for me, even at that young age, was never education, because I wasn't smart enough to go to college or have any type of higher education. The expectation was just find somebody, marry rich, and have them take care of you. I wasn't smart enough to take care of myself, even though I had been doing it since I was really young. And
I can't imagine how devastating that must have left you feeling and thinking.
when you grow up that way, you don't have hindsight. You don't understand. It's just your norm. It just is. And in the middle of all of that, my parents were gone, and my stepdad was doing everything he could to support the family. My mom was tagging along with him, and I was being left home alone with my older sibling and her then, boyfriend. And that was just the norm. So from a young age, I was in survival mode. I didn't understand it. I just did it. It just, and you want acceptance so bad from your family. So when they say, oh, you're a little bit heavy, and then they provide you with this way to fix that, you don't know any better. You just do it. You just go with it.
I mean, I can't imagine that being suggested as much today. They might say something like, okay, we're going to have you eat healthy and exercise a little bit more, but water pills and appetite suppressants, that seems like
B12 shots.
B12 shots, that seems like that was really over the top.
I would agree with you now, but at
Right.
the time I didn't know better.
Oh,
At the time it was
how
just
would
like,
how would you?
I'm fat and I'm chunky, and that's just how it's going to be. But if I do this, I won't be.
Sure.
And if
sure.
I do this and I'm successful, then I'll be accepted and loved. That's what that became as I matured. And when I say matured, I mean when I was 13.
Yeah, exactly.
After you were cooking for 4 or 5 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Spaghetti every day.
So, what about at school? Because your weight was a little bit of an issue, were you otherwise bullied a lot as well?
Oh my gosh. Non-stop. For as long as I can remember, I'm Mexican, but from my maternal side, and then from my paternal side, I am French and English. And I dared to say that I was Mexican, and there were those who thought, well, you don't look Mexican, so you're not. And I deal with that to this day. You don't look Mexican, so you can't say you're Mexican. And when I was really young, my mom would speak to me in Spanish, so I understood and spoke Spanish. But once I hit school, that stopped. So I lost my ability to speak Spanish. I understand words and phrases now, but I'm not fluent in it by any means. And I got in elementary school because I was always the new kid. I was always picked on because I was the new kid. When I got to junior high school, I was beat up during PE because I dared to say that I was Mexican, and
So was this by like Mexican gangs?
Oh, it was by
kind of thing?
So in California they're called cholas. Well, back then that's what they were. I don't know what we call people now. I think that's stupid to label anybody anything, but at that point that's what it was. The cholas singled me out in the mile run, and they cracked and broke 3 of my ribs, and my PE teacher had to come and get me off the field. And my mom came in, and just short little Mexican lady yelling up one side down the other in Spanish and chewing them out. And when they saw her and they heard her, that gave them a whole new perspective, and they were like, oh, maybe she is.
So that was a little bit less of a problem.
It was a little bit less of a problem.
Wow.
I mean, I still suffered the whole rest of that year with them going, oh, my ribs, every time I walked by, because I was legitimately hurt and injured. But there was one of them, and I still chat with her to this day, who was like, I'm sorry. I don't know why we did that. And even now in our adulthood, because we talk at least once a week, I don't know why we did that. I don't know what I was thinking.
Well, kids will do terrible things, and sometimes they learn to do things that they see older people do.
It's true. Yeah. A lot of the time it's our examples that we were given.
Well, we're going to hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to address another major challenge and pain that you had around this time. We'll be right back. Quantum Leap Recovery is the podcast of Pikes Peak Recovery Coaching. The podcast is researched, narrated, and facilitated by me, Dr. Peter Gregg, a licensed physician in long-term recovery and recovery coach. I will interview guests, but also bring to your attention the latest medical findings and advances. I want to connect with others and get input from the listeners. Insights and topic requests will be shared and acted upon. So why the name Quantum Leap Recovery? What's a quantum leap? Well, the Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines it as an abrupt change, sudden increase, or dramatic advance. For example, the experimental medication proved to be a quantum leap forward in treating cancer. Recovery can occur as regular baby steps and/or at times by quantum leaps. We are going to talk about the many roads, pathways, and timetables to recovery. A personal quantum leap sometimes occurs when we find an unfamiliar approach to our problem. So, join us on our podcast and support us on Red Circle. Well, welcome back to the third chair and our guest, Monique. Thank you again for being here, Monique. We talked earlier about your childhood, and you've shared some pretty intense stuff with us, and I just want to give you the opportunity to share whatever you feel comfortable with. It's some pretty intense material, and it happened around the time you're between 12 and 16. Whatever you'd like to share about that time period, please go ahead.
Next question. No, just kidding.
Yeah, she told me that she was not going to cooperate.
So there was this one time at band camp, even though I wasn't in band, I was in choir. No, just kidding.
Yeah?
Oh, man. You know, my childhood, we kind of glossed over it, really doesn't sound like it was super terrible. I mean, so I took care of myself when I was 8. That's not that big of a deal. And so I had to like cook and clean for myself and do my own laundry and make myself get up and go to school and make sure I was good to have a lunch. And I mean, I worked in a cafeteria. I don't think I ever told you guys that. I worked in the cafeteria in elementary school because it was fun. But all these little things that I did that was extra, writing that was extra, was to kind of get away from things and that were happening at home. And as I continued to grow and develop and hit that teenage, time where life is uncertain and you're trying to figure out who you are and hormones are going crazy and girls don't just have breasts but now they have hips too, and you have to be in the popular group but you're not quite cool enough to be in the popular group, so you want to do the things that get you in the popular group. Those were the least of my worries when I was 13, 14, and 15. That was like, I wish that those were my issues. I wish that those were the things that I was longing for and fighting for and trying to find my place in life. But that just wasn't my story. And it'd be a long time before I realized what that story, how it impacted me and my development and my growth and who I was becoming and who I've become. And crazy workaholic overachiever, which is what I am. And I own every ounce of that. It started probably when I was about 13, 14. And the first comment that was made to me, was, if you're old enough to bleed, you're old enough to breed. And I had no idea what that meant. I knew it wasn't good, but I didn't know what it meant. I was pretty innocent, surprisingly. And those comments and jokes came on a daily basis from an individual in my life. And this individual wanted me to set me up on a date with somebody, but wanted to know, if I had developed, since I had breasts, did I have pubic hair? And I was like, oh, I don't know, because I didn't have someone to guide me through that.
Mm-hmm.
And what I know now that I didn't know at those tender ages was that I was being groomed for things that were to come.
Mm.
And it didn't stifle me, but it was definitely not a comfortable place to be, and home definitely wasn't a safe space for me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And it started with verbal comments, and it started with it wasn't just verbal. I want to say abuse because it was, but I didn't know that's what it was then. And physical abuse would soon follow, but the path was being laid for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the psychological term is I was being groomed, but I didn't know it, and I wouldn't recognize it until I was much older.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. And I know you agreed to bring this up because this is still a pretty common problem amongst young ladies.
Absolutely.
And also because it takes a long time to kind of recover, if you can really use the word recover, from an experience like this. It's sort of a silly question, and silly is not the right word, an obvious question. How does that experience affect you today?
It never goes away. When you are assaulted, when you are groomed and molested and assaulted and raped, that stays with you. It's haunting. You develop triggers, you develop an awareness of yourself that otherwise would not have existed had you not had trauma such as this. And it wasn't enough that I had to be on my own at a young age. And don't misunderstand, like my mom really loved me, and my stepfather is my guidepost to this day. I'm very close with him. But when you endure that trauma as a young person, without boundaries, without security in your own home, and then it sets you up for this kind of abuse in your teenage years where you're most vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you grow into an adult, your brain just takes on this whole survival mode experience. And some people succumb to things like alcoholism and drugs. That was not my story. Some people, become type A personalities, and they're very rigid, and everything has to be perfect. That's not really my personality either. I, for years, and I'm going to go on a tangent, so I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
For years and years, I thought I was molested. And for whatever reason, being molested was easier. It made sense. It fit, and I learned to handle and endure and survive it. And it wasn't until I was in my early 30s where I started seeking more help psychologically that my therapist pointed out in a really tough session that not only was I groomed and molested, but that I was raped. And I couldn't put those pieces together, because when you live with the idea that this happened for so long, and you've basically developed your own coping skills to get through it, and somebody points out that it was something more than what you've already come to terms with, it's like it sends you through that wormhole again. And people will look at me to this day and they think I'm this super confident, really self-driven, awesome individual, right? And I can sit here and I can sit up straight and I can tell you that yes, on the outside, I am a very confident individual. I can come at a task like nobody's business. I can make it happen. But there is always that inner voice that says, you're not enough. You're not good enough. It was your fault. You deserved this. You deserved to be held down. You asked for it. You shouldn't have worn that. You shouldn't have said this. You shouldn't have looked at him like that. And that's always in you. And there are triggers that come up and they send you right back to where you were. And you have to learn how to pick yourself back up again and not let anybody else see that.
Thank you for sharing that. We know that families can be fooled. Friends of families can do things to children, and no one figures it out for a long time. It's a really terrible thing. Thank you for saying, you got therapy, and I know a lot of the incredible things you're doing now. I'm glad to hear there's light on the other side, and I think that is an important message to pass along too, that you've done a great thing with a hard topic, and we appreciate you bringing that out. When we come back, we're going to talk about all the awesome academic things that you've done that, of course, you would be too humble to talk about. And also, we'll talk a little bit about perhaps how some of these messages from the past have left you feeling about those accomplishments. We'll be right back.
of the Kentucky-Arizona Walnut Association?
It's kava.
The national coffee of Kawasaki, Japan?
It's kava.
Hiya!
Is it the secret elixir of the surfers in Hawaii?
Or is it the secret island recipe of Kona, Koala, Kauai, or Cola?
It's kava. Kava is Polish for coffee. And here at Kava Coffee, we focus on serving a delicious, high-quality cup of coffee in a space where love, coffee, and people mix into the perfect blend.
We value our relationships with our customers and our roasters. Buy locally whenever possible and truly have the homemade touch. Our pastries, syrups, and even our almond milk are made in-house.
So come on in, relax, get some work done. Enjoy the Kava community, some encouraging words from the Kava Coffee Gang.
Kava Coffee.
Be awake.
Hi, and welcome back to the third chair with our guest, Monique Foster. When we went to the break, we talked about coming back and talking about Monique's academic achievements. We're going to get to that in just a second. Monique had mentioned something that she wanted to say a few words about, and so we'll go right to that. Monique, in high school, when these horrible things happened, you used the words groom, molest, rape. I am sure that that was a dark time that I personally can't imagine. How did you deal with that? And you're off on your own quite a bit. At times, do you deal with that in a not productive way?
Oh, goodness. Yes, actually. So, at the ripe old age of 16, I was like 27, and the abuse stopped. I lost my virginity to rape when I was in early 15, 16 years old. And for me, it took away all meaning. So, you know, when you're a teenage boy and you're super excited for that first time, and girls are too, but we romanticize it. We think of candlelights and flowers, and, you know, you stole your mom's wine cooler, and you know, you think of that. And for me, it was trauma, and it changed how I looked at that. There are studies out there that show that 1 in 3 women will be raped before the age of 16. And I did a paper on this for school a few years ago. And as I was reading my research and understanding it, I was like, that's me. And that means that 6 people, 2 of us, have the same story or similar. And I wish I had realized that then, because what this did to me, I didn't self-harm like girls do now, where they cut themselves to release their pain and their trauma. I didn't have the rubber band that I snapped my wrist with to trick my brain into thinking something different when you were experiencing pain. I had a boyfriend, and he was good to me through high school. But what he didn't know was I had all this trauma, and I was living in a trauma brain, and I didn't know how to function. I didn't know what to do. So for me, intimacy didn't exist, which opened that door to promiscuity. So my form of self-harm was to have sex with whoever, if I decided that's what I wanted to do. And I never had an intimate connection with somebody that I was sexually active with. And I didn't know how much more damage I was doing to myself. I didn't understand that I was actually adding more trauma to my life, because for me, having sex with somebody was like giving you a hug. It meant nothing more than that to me, because of how I was introduced to that world or that relationship.
And did you have to address this issue as you got older?
Sort of. You know, I got to a place when I was 19 and a half, 20 years old, and I just decided that I didn't, and I had no therapy, no nothing at this point. I just had this epiphany that this was not what I wanted for myself. I did not want to have a boyfriend who only wanted to sleep with me, because I was tired of just having a boyfriend that just wanted to sleep with me, or having a guy that just wanted to sleep with me. So I just decided that this just wasn't going to happen. It wasn't anything other than I made a decision that that was not going to be my life anymore.
Wow. Looking back, do you think it would have been helpful had you had a counselor or a therapist or somebody talking with you earlier? Or I know you have since as you've gotten older, but is that something you would encourage if a woman's gone through what you've gone through to sort of use those type of services sooner?
Absolutely. But what we forget is when male or female, when this type of trauma happens, your brain stops developing at that age that it occurred. So for me, it stopped when I was between 14 and 16, and I didn't have the wherewithal to seek help. Now, I did tell my best friends what was going on, and they gave me a safe harbor. So when things were tough at home and that person was going to be there, I removed myself, because I drove. I could do whatever I wanted.
Sure.
Nobody cared when I was home. So I would just pack a bag and go. Or I always had, now it's called a go bag, because I know what that means. I always had a go bag, not knowing that that's what I had. I had a change of clothes, I had makeup, I had toiletries always in my car at all times, so that if I knew these people were going to be there, I just exited myself. I wasn't there. And they gave me safe harbor.
You know, I'm hoping that if there's other young people that have experienced something like this, and they've heard you, that that your words might encourage them to get help, find adults that can help them, because you know, this show might end up being the words they hear that makes a difference.
I really hope so. I wish I had asked and sought help from a school counselor, confided in a favorite teacher. I was so lost in that it was my fault and I'm the other woman, because that's what I was told. I was conditioned to believe that I was the other woman in this relationship. And I was filled with so much shame and so much guilt for years that I couldn't ask for the kind of help I needed. And we didn't publicize this. We didn't talk about this. We didn't talk about calling a 1-800 number or asking somebody to come and rescue you, because we looked at it as I needed to be rescued, and I can't be that weak. When in reality, it's not that you're that weak, it's that you're that strong.
You know, I don't think that sort of the attitude of or not being able to get help, I don't know that it's changed that much, unfortunately. Yeah, there are lines, there are, you know, counselors and therapists, and there's less stigma involved, but getting everyone to connect still seems to be a challenge.
it's wrapped up in shame.
Mm-hmm.
Because perpetrators know that, and they know that if they convince you that it's your fault, they know that if they can convince you that if you made a wrong choice, that they are free of that guilt and shame because they have convinced you that you have to own that guilt and that shame.
And frankly, sometimes people are manipulative and sort of evil and almost blackmail-like in how they use that information.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. We're going to talk about your academic achievements. We are really going to do it this time.
Got it.
Just because, I want to make a few points of this. So, with this very difficult uprising, still in adult life, you became a pharmacy technician. That's a helper in the pharmacy, filling prescriptions and whatnot. You obtained an EMTB. You got your MA license. You got an associate's degree from Pima Medical, and then finally finished a BS with a 4.2. And that is amazing. Congratulations on doing all those achievements. No small feat.
And I was raising 3 kids.
And you were raising 3 kids. Yeah. And
4 if you count my husband.
4 if you count your husband. Was there a dog? Wasn't there a dog?
There were 2. Well, there was 1 dog, and now there's 2 dogs.
1 dog and 2 dogs. And I know you also had some entrepreneurial leanings in this.
Yes, sir.
And so, I think that, that shows that you're a very talented lady as well. But messages from the past. There was also somehow the message, you're not smart enough. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How did you deal with those
I blew that crap right out of the water.
You did? Oh, good job. Yeah. Well, it goes to show you, our thoughts are not our reality.
It's true.
Just because I have a crazy thought doesn't mean that that's the truth.
It's true.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about something else on the third chair.
Are you facing some of the same issues as Monique? Here are some resources to get help.
And welcome back to the third chair. So we've been talking, and we have just realized, we probably realized it a little bit before now, that we are going to have a part 2 of this show with Monique as our special guest.
Next week.
And next week, that's right. And we tried to come up with a really good reason, but the best we could come up with is
My life is so screwed up. We need another episode.
How many episodes would it take to do one on you and me?
Too many to count.
Yeah, too many to count.
I spent enough time with you.
Yeah, 4 or 5 for you. No one would even try
All
to
right,
cross
maybe
it.
your lives are
All
more messed up than
season.
mine.
Oh, definitely.
All season
Everyone's got
perfume.
issues, you know. So, on that happy note, we will see you next week on the third chair.
This has been the third chair. Join us next week as we continue our conversation with Monique Foster. Want to be a guest? Want to sponsor our show? Send us an email. Please subscribe to our channel and follow us on social media.